What do you think is the instances of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in like the powerlifting community or the larger bodybuilding
Well, it's
community?
huge. I was just listening to a podcast. It was Docs Who Lift. It was the Nadolski brothers. But they were throwing some statistics out that they were very high. Very high. And these are guys who work out. These are guys who train. I want to say the numbers were north of 80% had at least two of the five, predictors of metabolic syndrome and some degree of fatty liver. I would suggest that that was pretty accurate, and more so than the general population who's obese. I would bulk up to compete in powerlifting. I'd be over 300 pounds at times. And then would diet down to single-digit body fat to compete in bodybuilding. Yeah. And so I was fixing a lot of the metabolic syndrome that I had succumbed to as a heavyweight every time I dieted down. And that's why I'm big on periodizing weight. Like with Hofthor, when I got him, he was 440. We brought him down to 395. We wanted to improve his metabolic syndrome. Right. And then when I took him back up with less saturated fat, a CPAP, vitamin D, more monounsaturated fats, 10-minute walks after meals, and so I could put the weight back on him with less accumulation of liver fat, and we saw an improvement in his AST, ALT, and a host of other metabolic syndrome markers. But many times throughout my career, I just dirty bulked, and I saw the results in the blood test.
Who has it?
But I knew it was temporary. Now guys who stay heavy, powerlifters, strongmen, even linemen in the NFL football that I work with, they have to be more diligent about either losing a little weight in the off season or implementing all the other things I just mentioned. Choline, you said TUDCA, NAC, all strategies that we use, to help with the long-term health. And so I was fortunate that I didn't expose myself to that for extended periods of times. I never used orals in the off season. I was really cautious with the liver. I always understood how critical it was for so many more things than what people presume. It was 400 functions in the body. The biggest reason for me at the time, the biggest reason for me at the time was simply appetite. If I started poisoning my liver with a bunch of orals, I couldn't eat, and you can't eat. You lose the size and strength.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So unless you eat, if you can eat, you probably also eat better because you can process it better.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is the instances of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in like the powerlifting community or the larger bodybuilding?
Well, it's huge.
Yeah,
what's
over
interesting?
Years, I've seen it a lot.
Well, I was just listening to a podcast last night. Sometimes I get up at 4 a.m. and I feel compelled to listen to a podcast.
So there you go.
And it was Docs Who Lift. It was the Nadolski brothers, Spencer Nadolski and his brother Carl. Carl's an endocrinologist. Spencer's internal medicine with obesity specialist and lipidologist. And they have a podcast called Docs Who Lift. And they were specifically talking about metabolic syndrome the other day. And I've been, of course, my seminars have been talking about this for many, many years because I experienced it myself and I saw it in my athletes. But they were throwing some statistics out that they were very high. Very high. And these are guys who work out. These are guys who train. And these were the NFL football player types, the linemen that are over 300 pounds, and, of course, the strongmen and powerlifters. I want to say the numbers were north of 80% had at least two of the five predictors of metabolic syndrome and fatty liver, some degree of fatty liver, which, and I would suggest that was pretty accurate, and more so than the general population who's obese. More so than the general population.
Athletes that eat a lot of food, and if you don't do a periodic diet at least once per year, where you really come down sub 8% body fat, or you have a real high metabolic rate, so you can get away with it. But like I suffered from it myself, and I have no idea how long my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease was there. Probably like 2.5 years, because the previous diet that I did was tougher, and I didn't really get down to that gnarly condition because the workload was just too much. So I didn't really get down that far. And then, of course, you really need to crunch down to get the non-alcoholic fatty liver resolved. So I needed to come off completely, restore the hepatocytes by not having too much testosterone in the picture, and really recover the, the stem cells, which are present within the liver.
Yeah.
And it took me like eight months to really get that resolved. And then when I went in for a fibro scan, they had to do it 10 times because they couldn't believe how good the results were. Like I had a liver, the health of like a 6-year-old. Like, this can't be right. Something is wrong with the machine. But it's because I literally lost all my size and I didn't eat. I did like fasting mimicking for 6 weeks just to really get it resolved. I lost all my gains. But
weight loss, about a 7% weight loss can resolve 95% of fatty liver. That's kind of the primary goal, is weight loss. And then there's some other things, like you mentioned. Choline is a good one for helping with the liver repair, along with the supplements that you mentioned. As far as gaining weight, saturated fats seem to amplify the amount of liver fat that's accumulated as you gain weight. And so that's a time at which I would try and really bottom those out. Just lower fats in general, for me, when people are trying to gain weight, and I push carbs, but I'm also trying to get them to increase their workload. I love daily doubles. That to me is optimal. Under an 800 gram of carb a day bulk, I'd like to see an AM, PM workout with plenty of volume, plus the 10-minute walks after meals.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I grew the most, when I was doing that in the off season. Of course, you limit your amount of fat intake during the day, and only healthy sources, a lot of omega-3s and poly monounsaturated fats, and the trans fat are non-existent, and the saturated are quite low. But you do 2 workouts per day, and some recovery aids to facilitate all the the anabolism. You go really, really far. You see that with the athletes that I helped in this sense, the liver values to stay sustained, even though you would think that liver enzymes would go up due to all this hypertrophy work, which can also give you a false positive for the liver enzymes, the transaminases, which are also found in skeletal muscle. But you see that's actually quite well sustained. I just think that at one point there's like a point of no return, and then liver health is a little bit impaired, and it doesn't really matter what you do to progress, strength-wise or size-wise. It just goes, downhill disproportionately for the amount of progress that you're making. And that's when you need to stay back. And most athletes are a little bit stubborn in a sense. They're like, yes, now I'm on track. I'm 2 increments away from my PR, right? Or I'm 5 pounds away of being a 4XL, 5XL shirt. And that's when you have to reel them back and say, listen, this off season is over. Because, the longer you continue, the more deleterious it is for your, liver health, which then cascades into everything else.